could you talk a little more about what you meant by a rajasic awakening? With gratitude to all the team, and I look forward to meeting in person. Lovely. Thank you. So, rajasic awakening. I don't think we have given this to a body of the course. Certainly it didn't form an independently standing discourse to my memory. I don't think this what we did, although I'm pretty sure throughout the course there were allusions were made to how this state or status of our nervous system reflects the way the process will unfold. This is very, very important and very interesting as well. This is very interesting for everyone who is like in a position of working with others. Any one of you who at some point maybe will be or already working as a therapist in any capacity, as a teacher, guide, mentor, or simply educator. This understanding is very important, that awakening cannot be seen as one size fits all, and that it precedes a certain kind of outline perspectives. Although we always speak about this, there is only really one pathway to God, so to speak, and that pathway to God is only through the medium channel. So this also puts all the speculations aside. There is no such thing as arriving to God through some kind of like any other road. There's no other road. There's only one path, which consists of the three legitimate pathways within that single path, right? Just to give us a reminder. Which, by the way, I was surprised when I read an article by a very respected Ayurvedic physician, John Deliard, who gave his kind of stab at various ways of how Kundalini can awaken and travel, and he did some injustice to the subtlety of the process and actually make some really, really unforgettable errors when he defined this. And I was puzzled, why would he even choose to go into the subject? You do your, you have your name secured there in the field of Ayurveda, right? Your name is like very well known. If you Google, right, John Deliard is like, was in partnership with Deepak Chopra. They nearly owned the business together. Just this is as a footnote. And just, beginning of this season, right, sometimes in September, an essay was sent to me where this was published in one of the very respectable online publications. I don't remember which one, but a very respectable one, read by thousands and thousands of people. And he operates with all this terminology and uses the Vajra Nadi as an example, but he gives a complete wacky, one-sided and incorrect response. I was kind of held myself back to write comments there because, I don't want to do like create a trolling account to go there, but I didn't want to do it under my name, simply not to kind of create an enemy for myself. But it's an example of how people go into these fields and they think that if they have a degree and degree of understanding in some areas, that is a visa to interpret this from all other points of view and areas which now extended to the Kundalini process. So, like he was certainly making big lapses there. So this is why the course was devised as it was. And I will make my presence from now on more regular on the Kundalini group, by the way, where I also want to adjust why, for instance, we have not added Joanne Harrigan's Kundalini Vidya into the curriculum of the material or into the list of reading. I want to be very clear about that because there is an outstanding precedence there. And I have worked with people who went through the PK, they have this, some PKY, something like that. Anyway, people who already went through treatments there still came to me, irrespective of being there under therapeutic stationary treatment, as well as long online and in the event working with that extraordinary level of in-depth and insights. But there are certain divergences, and the umbrella that I've decided to give to the course did not invite to include that. So I want to be very clear to these sharings that came on the Kundalini group on Facebook. So, Rajasic awakening. Let's make it short, but clear enough for us to have this understanding. Since everything in nature is under the domain of the Gunas, because that's how nature, Prakriti, expresses and operates itself. Those of you who are familiar with that, it's super easy to understand. Those of you who are less familiar, you may need to just catch up, and hopefully our glossary allows that. Just a very quick help there, that what Sattva, Rajas and Tamas stand for, they are all needed there. Sattva, Rajas and Tamas are all these major forces with which nature operates. There's nothing that is without the presence of the three. Everything is. However, when these primordial forces, primordial energies, referred to in Sanskrit as Gunas, are spoken to in relation to the spiritual process, then they are mainly spoken in relation to the psychological influences that the Gunas here represent. And may I bring this as a reminder? Mind, senses, and the body are the expressions of the Gunas as well. Mind is expression of Sattva, senses expression of Raja Guna, and body as the physiology, as the structure, is an expression of Tamaguna. That's all fine. There's nothing that is wrong or something needs to be done about that. Body is already inert. We know that. Unless life force enlivens, body is inert. Body is inert in deep sleep, body is inert under the shot of some kind of tranquilizer, too many drugs taken thoughtlessly. So body is inert when the life force departed. So yes, that is tamaguna, inertia. Senses are active, overly active. We could say even that that's what makes us keep losing our peace of mind, is because that's what mind is, drawn out of its own seat into the domain of the senses perpetually. Whereas sattva here represents equilibrium, not balance, and that's the real essence of the mind, and that is helpful to have that scriptural reference in terms of manas chaitanya. So mind is consciousness. So putting aside all the speculations of New Age or some teaching of even famous gurus of the 20th century, there's no need to, it's the time by now we should have rehabilitated the mind fully. Without the mind, there's no possibility of anything. So every teacher who bashes the mind for too long needs to be taken, needs to be given a very, very close scrutiny. So therefore we speak about it on any occasion that mind cannot be made hostage or reason for our unhappiness. No, mind in its essence is sattva. Mind likes and craves balance. That balance and equilibrium here is also not far from bliss. So that's what mind craves. It has a funny way of going about it, that's a different story. But that's what the essence and the nature of the mind. So when we speak about this and this addition here, what did I mean by rajasic awakening? prior to the release of Kundalini, whatever is a predominant Guna there, whatever is the predominantly functioning gunic setup and proportion of the Gunas in between themselves, specifically in terms of its influence on our psyche, as I said, that what will color the process. Therefore, awakening can be Satwik, it can be Rajasic, and it can be even Tamasik. Satwik awakening would immediately make itself known by a lot of very, very desirable manifestations, heightened intuition which will guide us, that inner compass will direct our moves. There will be much greater ease in bringing changes into our life, because that's what Kundalini will desire and require. It's easy to also ride the difficult phases, because whatever material that may be thrown on the path of Kundalini to unravel, to digest and assimilate and metabolize, if there is already a Satwik predisposition, one will be saved from falling prey to unhealthy habits, or habits that may kick in as a result of a revival of certain deeper-seated samskaric fields. When the samskaric field is shaken, some stuff may come to the surface. We may develop interest in things that we hardly were at all affected by our life prior to that. It may come as a surprise. Suddenly I have this penchant for smoking drugs, smoking weed, going this, let alone indulgence in any other areas, indulgence in sweets, indulgence in sex, indulgence in anything we call indulgence, you see. Satwik awakening will already rule all this out, because mind already have these Satwik tendencies, and it reflects awareness to whatever degree there. So when it reflects awareness to that degree, then it will only go from more to more of that. Rajasic awakening, just go back to Satwik awakening. But there are, of course, still traces. In the Satwik awakening, there are only traces of Rajasic tendencies in the psyche. Practically no Tamasik tendencies, because that's the nature of the correlation between the Gunas. You cannot have, on a level of the psyche, on a level of psychology and mind, Satwik dominance with the presence of Tamaguna. Do you understand why that is? Maybe it will become clearer in a moment. So some Rajasic tendencies will still be there. But with the Sattva dominates, it will not pose too much difficulty to subdue and transform this, and these Rajasic tendencies of going here, going there, running around like a chicken without a head, or doing too many things, or being all over the place, or suddenly being exploding inside out because you need to do this, because you need to leave an imprint on the world, and somehow all this is like what Rajaguna is known for, will be in a much, much less demanding state and will not pose too much imposition on the process. When Rajasic awakening takes place, this causes a lot of agitation, of course, because if Rajaguna dominates at the time of awakening, then that's what this awakening will be associated with. It will be anything from excessive pain, because Rajaguna also associated with a lot of pain. By the way, interesting footnote here. Even the threshold of physical pain in the being in whom Sattva dominates, there's a greater threshold to physical pain of any kind. In a rajasic person, it is much less. They really, really suffer. And in a tamasic person, they can't stand the pain. Tamasik, when a tamaguna dominates, it's like person cannot stand pain. It's something which is intolerable. So rajasic awakening is overheated. There's too much fire. There's too much of that what potentially can manifest in variety of now psychosomatic manifestations. And worst of all is that in the rajasic awakening, that tendency, that propensity to run ahead of oneself will be there. So therefore, whatever degree of sattva there is, because there must be some, is like if you can put just one single foot there and begin to bring the center of gravity of your body to change that into that foot so that you can, metaphorically speaking, take another stand, is paramount. And this is where, of course, guidance and mentorship is of exceptional importance, because the guidance and the mentorship will help to transform, to change, and to generate more and more sattva, so as to avoid a lot of undesirable consequences of rajasic awakening. And rajasic awakening also leads to premature everything. People become obsessive with their ideas. They think that they have some kind of mission to carry into the world. They all eager to go and start already teaching, just like 1 year into awakening, and you already feel that there is some profound task and mission is delegated, because also it fires passion, imagination. The spiritual experiences are not Satwik. They are not filled with the, connection to the structures that structure that whole thing. In the Satwik awakening, there are this so-called angelic realm descends down to support the being. All these devas come down to carry that being, because that's what the relationship here is. In Rajasic awakening, that being already thinks that he or she can take heaven by storm, by slamming through the door and by carrying the flag and just, waving it and, revolutionizing something, just whilst at the same time really knowing no peace yet. And Tamasik awakening is the worst of them all, because Tamasik awakening is, unfortunately, we have to say that, is where very undesirable stuff can happen and does happen, because Tamasik awakening is, at the psychological level, is what leads to this so-called, again, in parentheses, demonic possessions. The body's energy field is open up to all this, now we're speaking about really negative cosmic energies that find their breathing space here, and they come in and latch to this, because in Satwik person, they cannot do that. There's no room, no space. There's too much equilibrium. But Tamasik awakening leads to these possibilities, and historically we can speak about historical figures even who became the manifestations of this Tamasik awakening, which led to complete obsession and possession of the being by universal forces which are here to destroy and nothing else. Not destroy in the sense of Shiva destroying, but destroy in a sense of changing the very fabric of what this whole life is about. Destroying the very, very fine fabric of evolution and consciousness itself. So this is like that primordial battle between light and darkness. So that's what Tamasic awakenings are. And of course, it's a big topic, again, as I said, did not make into this individual discourse, simply not to cause speculations, as we have unfolded the course, but now I think it's very fitting. So thank you for bringing it up.